What I'm about to tell you happened 3 years ago, but I still wake up at night drenched in sweat, hearing those screams echoing in my head. I've been a cop for 12 years, seen things that would make most people lose their faith in humanity, but nothing, absolutely nothing prepared me for what I encountered on Highway 47 that October night. Some things you see can't be unseen, some doors once opened can never be closed, and some sounds follow you forever. Before I dive into this nightmare, if you enjoy true horror stories from real professionals, hit that subscribe button. Trust me, you'll want to be here for the stories coming next. Now, let me take you back to that cursed night. My name is Detective Marcus Webb. I'm 38 years old, married with 2 kids, and I work for the County Sheriff's Department in rural Pennsylvania. Been doing this job since I was 26. I've handled everything from domestic disputes to murder investigations, from drug busts to missing person cases. I thought I'd seen it all. My wife, Caroline, she's a nurse at the county hospital. We live in a small town called Millbrook, population barely 3,000. It's the kind of place where everyone knows everyone, where crime is usually limited to teenagers spray painting the water tower or old Joe getting drunk and sleeping it off in his pickup truck. That particular October was unusually cold. The leaves had already fallen from most of the trees, and there was this constant fog that rolled in every evening around 6 o'clock, thick as cotton, making visibility on the back roads almost impossible. I was working the night shift, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., just me and my partner Rodriguez in our patrol car, covering about 100 square miles of mostly empty farmland and forest. October 23rd, 2021. The date is burned into my memory like a brand. It was a Friday night. Temperature had dropped to about 38 degrees, and that fog I mentioned was particularly dense. Rodriguez and I had just finished our coffee break at the 24-hour diner on Route 9 when dispatch came through on the radio. Unit 47, we have a 911 call from a cell phone. Caller reports seeing someone walking on Highway 47 near mile marker 34. Caller states the person appears to be injured and covered in blood. Can you respond? Highway 47 is this long, winding stretch of two-lane road that cuts through the Blackwood Forest. During the day, it's beautiful, all those tall pines and oak trees creating a canopy overhead. At night, especially with fog, it's like driving through a tunnel into hell itself. There are no streetlights, no houses for miles in either direction, just trees and darkness and the occasional deer crossing sign. Copy that, dispatch. Unit 47 responding. I replied, already feeling that familiar knot in my stomach. Something about this call felt off from the start. Rodriguez, he was younger than me, only 29, Mexican-American kid from Philadelphia who moved out here for the quiet life. Good cop, bit too eager sometimes, but reliable. He looked at me as I turned the patrol car around and headed toward Highway 47. Probably just some drunk who wandered away from a party, he said, trying to sound casual, but I could hear the edge in his voice. Maybe, I replied, but I didn't believe it. Not on Highway 47. That road had a reputation. 3 fatal accidents in the last 5 years, 2 unsolved missing person cases, and more deer strikes than any other highway in the county. Local kids called it the Death Road. My grandmother, God rest her soul, used to tell me stories about that stretch when she was young, about travelers who went missing in those woods, about strange lights seen between the trees. We arrived at mile marker 34 about 15 minutes later. The fog was so thick our headlights barely penetrated 20 feet ahead. Rodriguez activated our spotlight, sweeping it back and forth across the tree line on both sides of the road. Nothing, just that impenetrable wall of mist and the dark shapes of pine, trees looming like giant sentinels. Dispatch, Unit 47 on scene at mile marker 34. No visual on the individual reported. We're going to do a sweep of the area. Copy that, 47. Be advised, the caller also reported hearing screaming coming from the woods. Rodriguez and I exchanged glances. Screaming. That wasn't in the initial call. We got out of the patrol car, the cold immediately biting through our uniforms. I grabbed my Maglite flashlight from the belt. Rodriguez did the same. The silence was oppressive. No wind, no animal sounds, nothing. Just our breathing and the faint hum of the patrol car's engine. Hello? Police. Anyone out here? Rodriguez called out. His voice seemed to get swallowed by the fog, like the air itself was eating the sound. We started walking along the shoulder of the highway, our flashlights cutting weak beams through the mist. That's when I saw it. Footprints. Bare footprints. In October. On asphalt that was maybe 40 degrees. Rodriguez, look at this. The prints were small, maybe a woman's size 6 or 7, and they were stained red. Blood. Fresh blood, still glistening in my flashlight beam. The prints led off the highway and into the woods, disappearing into the underbrush. My radio crackled. Unit 47, do you need backup? I should have said yes. God, I should have said yes right then and there. But I didn't. Negative, dispatch. We're following a trail into the woods. We'll update in 10 minutes. The woods were worse than the highway. The fog was even thicker here, and the trees blocked out what little moonlight there was. Our flashlights created these weird shadows that seemed to move on their own, dancing between the tree trunks. The bloody footprints continued, perfectly spaced, methodical, like whoever was walking had been in no hurry at all. We followed them for maybe 5 minutes, going deeper into the Blackwood forest, when Rodriguez grabbed my arm. Marcus, do you hear that? I stopped, held my breath, listened. At first, nothing. Then, faint. So faint I almost thought I was imagining it. I heard it. Singing. A woman's voice, singing some melody I didn't recognize. The sound was coming from somewhere ahead of us, deeper in the woods. Hello? Ma'am, this is the police. We're here to help you. I called out. The singing stopped. Immediately, like someone had hit a pause button. The silence that followed was somehow worse than the singing had been. Then we heard the screaming. It wasn't human. I mean, it came from a human throat. I'm sure of that. But the sound itself wasn't anything a person should be able to make. It was this high-pitched, warbling shriek that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once, echoing through the trees, bouncing off the fog surrounding us. Rodriguez had his hand on his service weapon. What the fuck was that? I don't know, but we need to find whoever that is. Come on. We moved faster now, following the footprints, following that terrible sound that came in waves, stopping and starting, sometimes close, sometimes distant. My heart was hammering in my chest. I'd been in dangerous situations before, confronted armed suspects, broken up violent fights, but this was different. This felt wrong on a level I couldn't explain. The footprints led us to a small clearing. In the center of the clearing, illuminated by our flashlights, was a woman. She was standing perfectly still, facing away from us, wearing what looked like a white nightgown, completely soaked in blood. Her hair was long, black, hanging down to her waist, dripping with the same dark liquid that covered her gown. She was barefoot, and I could see more blood pooled around her feet. Ma'am, this is the police. We need you to turn around slowly and show us your hands. She didn't move, didn't acknowledge us at all, just stood there, perfectly motionless. Ma'am, I need you to turn around now. That's when she started laughing. Low at first, then building, getting louder and louder until it filled the clearing, filled the entire forest it seemed. And then she turned around. I've seen a lot in my years as a cop. I've seen what car accidents do to human bodies. I've seen what bullets do. I've seen what fire does. But I had never seen anything like her face. Her eyes were completely black. Not just the pupils, the entire eye, black as coal, black as the void between stars. Her mouth was open impossibly wide, stretched in a grin that showed teeth that were filed to points. And her skin, Jesus Christ, her skin was gray, corpse gray, with these black veins running underneath it like a road map to hell. But the worst part, the absolute worst part, was that I recognized her. Sarah? I whispered, my voice barely working. Sarah Mitchell, age 23, university student. Disappeared 3 months ago after leaving a party on Highway 47. We'd searched for weeks. Found her car abandoned at mile marker 32, driver's door open, keys still in the ignition, her purse and phone still inside. No sign of struggle, no blood, no trace. Just gone. Like she'd walked away and vanished into thin air. We'd assumed she was dead. Had to be. Nobody survives 3 months in these woods, especially not with winter coming. We'd told her parents to prepare for the worst. Her mother had cried in my office, begging me to find her baby girl. And here she was, or what was left of her. Sarah, it's Detective Webb. Do you remember me? We've been looking for you. Your parents have been looking for you. Rodriguez had his gun drawn now. Marcus, we need to call this in. We need backup. We need to get the fuck out of here. but I couldn't move. I was transfixed, staring at this impossible thing in front of me. "What are you?" I asked. It smiled wider, if that was even possible. "We are the old things. The things that lived here before the trees, before the towns, before the roads. We are the things your grandmother warned you about. We are hunger. We are the dark. We are the door that opens in the woods at night." That's when it moved. Not walked, not ran, moved. 1 second it was 20 feet away. The next it was right in front of me. That face inches from mine. Those black eyes staring into mine. And I could smell it. This rotting, putrid smell like spoiled meat and decay and death. I don't really remember the next few minutes clearly. I know Rodriguez fired his weapon, emptied his entire magazine into that thing. I know I stumbled backward, fell, scrambled to my feet. I know we ran like our lives depended on it, crashing through the underbrush, branches tearing at our faces and uniforms, our flashlights bouncing wildly as we tried to find our way back to the highway. Behind us, that screaming started again, but now it was joined by laughter, that same terrible laughter, echoing through the trees, following us, getting closer. We burst out onto Highway 47, lungs burning, legs screaming. Our patrol car was exactly where we'd left it, engine still running, lights still on. We threw ourselves inside, Rodriguez flooring it before I'd even closed my door properly, tires squealing as we sped away from that nightmare. Neither of us spoke for the entire drive back to the station. What could we say? What words could possibly explain what we'd just seen? When we got back, we filed our report. Tried to, anyway. How do you write up that you encountered what appeared to be a missing person who was definitely not human anymore? How do you explain black eyes and impossible movements and voices that shouldn't exist? The chief didn't believe us. Thought we'd been exposed to some kind of chemical in the woods, some hallucinogenic fungal spores maybe. Ordered us both to take a week off, get psychological evaluations, the works. But here's the thing. 3 days after our encounter, they found Sarah Mitchell's body, or what was left of it. A hunter discovered her remains about half a mile from where Rodriguez and I had seen her. Medical examiners said she'd been dead for approximately 3 months, killed shortly after she disappeared. Cause of death was exposure and blood loss from multiple lacerations. She'd been dead the entire time. Dead for 3 months. Decomposed beyond recognition, the ME said. They only identified her through dental records. So what the hell did Rodriguez and I see in those woods? What spoke to us with Sarah's face? What emptied my partner's gun into and barely slowed down? Rodriguez quit 2 weeks later. Moved back to Philadelphia. Said he couldn't do this anymore. Couldn't live in a place where things like that existed. Last I heard, he's working private security for some corporate office building. Won't talk to me anymore. Won't return my calls. I'm still here. Still working as a detective. Still driving past Highway 47 every time I'm on patrol. But I never go down that road at night anymore. Never go into the Blackwood Forest. And I tell anyone who'll listen to stay away from mile marker 34. Sometimes, when I'm lying in bed next to Caroline, unable to sleep, I can still hear it. That singing, that laughter, that screaming. And sometimes, just sometimes, when I'm driving at night and I pass a dark stretch of road, I see something in my rearview mirror. A figure in white, standing in the middle of the road, watching me drive away. Sarah's parents came to see me last month. They wanted to know what really happened to their daughter. Wanted to know if she suffered. I lied. Told them it was quick, that she probably didn't feel much. How could I tell them the truth? How could I tell them that their daughter's body was empty for 3 months while something else wore her skin? How could I explain that whatever their daughter encountered in those woods, it was worse than death? There are things in this world that don't make sense, that don't fit into our understanding of reality. Things that hide in the dark places, in the forgotten corners, waiting. And sometimes, if you're unlucky enough, if you're in the wrong place at the wrong time, you'll meet them. And once you do, once you've looked into that darkness and seen it look back, you're never the same. I still work as a cop, still protect and serve. But now I know the truth. Now I know what's really out there. And on foggy October nights, when dispatch sends me to Highway 47, I make sure to request backup. Lots of backup. If this story gave you chills, if it made you check over your shoulder, hit that like button and subscribe for more real horror stories from people who've seen what lurks in the darkness. Share this with someone who needs a good scare. And remember, next time you're driving down a lonely road at night and you see someone standing by the side of the highway, maybe don't stop. Maybe just keep driving. because some people aren't people anymore. Thanks for listening. Stay safe out there. And whatever you do, stay away from Highway 47.